All right, greetings from the Dark Continent. Conscious Caracal here, or Adams Van Sale, here to shine a light, not this time on Africa, but rather on the future of dissent. And joining me here tonight for this very interesting and important topic is Mark Granza. He's the founding editor of the publication IM-1776. And this publication describes its mission as to expose the limits of mainstream conservative movements and to start thinking of a way forward that fully recognizes the seriousness of our situation. Now, that's very much in a short nutshell, and we're going to be going a bit more into exactly what Mark is trying to achieve with his platform. And Mark also tells me this is his YouTube debut, so I'm looking forward to this conversation. Welcome on the show, Mark.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here, man.
All right. So just before we start, just a reminder to the audience, as the Prudentialist always says, Ernst doesn't shill his own content, so others have to shill it for him. So I'd appreciate it if some of you share the link, get some people here. Let's grow that audience. So Mark, let's start off with on a personal note, just your own background. Where did your journey start that deposited you in this position where you ended up being the founding editor of IM-1776? Where does your journey start, and what happened in between up until now?
Well, it started, I would say, late in my 20s, actually. If you would ask me in my early 20s, I will end up, if you had told me that in my early 20s, that I'm probably going to end up, being an editor or like running a publication, I would never believe you. It really wasn't like, there was nothing really in my late teens or early 20s or my education or anything that so like suggested I might ever find myself in this position. So it was really like I've always had somewhat of an interest in like American politics in general. I've always been fascinated. I guess I've started become interested like in a lot of like conspiracies late in my teens and stuff like that. And but it really never really went deep. I never really bothered to pay that much attention to what's going on until really like 2016. I would say, and I was living in London at the time, and I was working like in the hospitality industry. I'm a high school dropout also, so I've never really had that much interest in. No, I had a lot of interest. I really never had that much. Trust institutions or whatever. So I've always been a little bit of a rebel. That's been one constant in my life. And then in 2016 it was like the whole world seemed like it was like going crazy, and Trump and Brexit happened, especially Brexit, because I was in the UK, I was in London, and so like everyone started like giving their takes and talking about politics. People never talked politics before, and so I always wanted to have like the last word in the arguments whenever something like came up about the state of the society and the world, whatever. So I decided to just like dig a little bit deeper and trying to figure out what's going on. Then, shortly after that, I had to return to Italy for a few circumstances, and I just went down a rabbit hole essentially, and I just became more and more aware of actually my conservatism, or like my right wingness, whatever you want to call it. I never really thought that I was a right winger, because I was always associated my like anti-establishment so like positions and tendencies in general with the left. So you probably would have asked me in early 20s would have said I was a leftist or something.
Yeah, you sided with anyone that was anti the establishment at that time, anti the powers that be, the powers that control your society at that time.
Right. Yeah. You always, to some degree, still people today, to this day, they think, if you're opposed to power, if you're opposed to sort of like the elite, you're sort of like a left wing revolutionary or something like that. But I've always been a little bit of a social conservative. I wasn't really like living that kind of life. But I always disliked the sort of like old progressive things, like consumer culture and so like all of that stuff. And then essentially when I began sort of like read more and become more informed, and sort of like try to dig deeper and trying to find out exactly what my position was, I found out, it was actually quite conservative in general. And there was like the old intellectual dark web thing going on a little bit. I was a little into that at the beginning. But that didn't last long. I sort of like I started paying attention on Twitter, sometime around like 2018, 2019, and I started finding all these accounts and sort of like these smaller figures, they were making more sense. than the mainstream, really, and so it was really like going down a rabbit hole. It was more and more radical, whatever you want to call it. It was more like alternative, so like takes on the current state of society, government, etc. And then 2020 happened, and then 2020 was just like too much to take. I was in Italy. The lockdowns began, and I was actually quite in favor of the first 2 weeks. The first, maybe even less than that, like a week. It seems like there was not much information really available, so it seemed like a good idea, like a decent idea, like the best available. But that didn't last long. It just like, and then the riots really. And I'm not even American. I've been to America twice in my life. But the riots, there was something that, the Floyd riots in 2020, the summer riots of Black Lives Matter. It was just too much to take. At the same time, the hypocrisy, although it's not really hypocrisy, I don't like to use that word, but like double standard of the regime, there was too much to take. And so I had this website, and which used to be my own blog, which is actually IM-1776 today. And I decided to turn it into a publication, literally like that. One day I was talking to a friend and I said it. And 2 weeks later, I launched the website. So that's basically how I ended up here. Nothing really that would have indicated in my previous life that I would be in this position now.
Yeah, no, that's. I think we all have a fascinating story, but that leads us up to where we are now. Something that I actually wanted to also know, now that we are on the topic of you starting your publication, do you have any? Are you a writer? Where do your talents and your strengths lie? Do you think? Are you more into specifically the publication game? What do you think is your main strengths?
I have no talents. I'm just the guy behind the scene, getting lucky. No, I'm not. I really, I always say this, like, when I I've had a couple of podcasts before, and I guess I can say this something good, like to manage expectations, or just like to put it out there. I'm really not a writer, not an intellectual, not a thinker, not a scholar, not anything like that. I'm literally just some guy is trying to make sense of things. And I think what I do contribute in, I think, I've written some stuff before. I published some, as I said, like after 2016, I got more into, the state of what's going on, etc. And I published a couple of articles here and there, but it was nothing really big. And really by 2020, as I said, I found really this community of people that were really insightful. That were, some of the people were anonymous, some were not. Really don't mind that at all. And they were making this, I was really interested. I was really interested in what were they saying. I found it insightful. I learned a lot, paying attention to some of these accounts, some of these, it was mostly on Twitter. And, I knew that, essentially the reason because I decided to start a publication is because I knew the sort of like alternative solution that we were looking for, that were not going to come from me. I reached the point in my life where I've been arrogant in the past. I've been sort of like, I thought I was always right, but I reached that stage in my life, and what I knew was, that I'm a limited guy, right? And so, but in a way, so like understanding my limits was kind of like, I like to say, once you understand your limits, the possibility becomes limitless. Sounds cheesy, but in a way, it was like that for me. Once I understood my place, I'm just a guy trying to make sense. If you put me maybe like in a normie publication or like a normie stream or something, then I can really have a debate. I can sound smart. I can, I have some insights, I have some takes, I have some talking points. But other than that, really, I'm just, I have a good eye for content. As probably, a lot of people said that to me. Probably have a good eye for talent when it comes to good prose and something and things like that. And I would say I contribute mostly to the aesthetic aspect. I tend to think a lot of like in images rather than words. I don't know exactly what that says about me, but I tend to think in images. So a lot of what the project really is like, the best way I can probably describe it really is like sort of like composing, like putting together the pieces of a puzzle, right? Like I have a vague idea of what the future should look like, what the vision is, but I don't know what the final picture will look like. And what I do is just trying to find people doesn't make more sense. Those are some insights that are not really being said or like being published in general, like in mainstream publications or things like that, or like said in the mainstream. And I try to put them together in one single outlet. And I seem to be doing quite well. I've got some really good help.
Quite well is an understatement. I think it's doing extremely well from what I can see. But I mean, just from my impression,
like you're one of them now. We ran your article, which is really brilliant. And it's a good example, right? Because you don't you said what a lot of people are saying, right? We need to fight, right? But you articulated better. You gave some historical background, you gave some reason. And I like that line at the end when you said, essentially there's beauty in the fight, right? I think you were quoting your father, if I remember correctly, right? Hard times gives you a possibility to lead a great life, and so it's always looking about that extra thing, that is not being said, that should be said, and so that can be integrated within a larger vision. So that's really my role. And there's a lot of other things going on. Now we got into printing as well, so there's a lot of little things to take care of. It's a lot of work, but it's really meaningful and I enjoy a lot. So that's my side of things.
Yeah, well, what you're doing there with your publication resonates a lot with me as well, seeing as I'm constantly trying to encourage people that we're going to have to start building our own institutions, starting our own publications, starting our own organizations, and taking care of our own communities. Because for too long, people have just been preoccupied with all these captured organizations and captured publications, trying to save them. Like, we can save them, we can save them. Like, no. The biggest mistake the people on the Titanic made was up until the last minute, they were still holding on to the idea that the ship can't sink. And then it was too late. And that misassumption led to the deaths of so many more people, because up until the last moment, they were all still convincing themselves, don't worry, the ship can be saved. And I think what you're doing there with your publication is the right step in the right direction. Don't try to, on the outside looking in, try to save the publications that are going off the deep end, that are drifting left. Rather, it's more difficult, and it's not the easy road. But starting your own publications, writing your name in big font at the top, and saying, this is ours, this is what we stand for, and this is what we want to put out there, this is our mission. That is the only way forward. You can't keep looking, can't stop not looking past the ship and thinking, no, the Titanic's going to be fine. Don't worry. We don't have to build life rafts. We don't have to start thinking of a plan B. Plan A is still on course. I think that's the big mistake.
Oh yeah, totally. Like we said when we launched the magazine 2 years ago, I've had some help writing that statement, but we essentially said it's not that conservatism is failing. It's not that it's struggling. Conservatism is dead. I mean, we literally said that. Conservatism has failed, has been liberated by his, ideology, by essentially by complete political defeat. Right? There's nothing left. There's really not much left to conserve. I mean, it's not entirely true, because there's a lot of beauty. When it comes to the physical world, there's a lot to conserve on the front. But when it comes to cultural issue and there's really not really much to conserve. The way our deepest belief, or the way that we conduct ourselves, the way that people, their philosophy, their way of the general direction the society is heading, is there's really nothing that we need to conserve. There has to be some kind of revolutionary. There has to be some revolutionary ideals, or revolutionary society, revolutionary beliefs that have to replace what we're heading, and what we believe, and the way we behave ourselves, and we conceptualize politics and all the potential solutions to our what's wrong with what's happening. So I totally agree. I mean, and the institutions, especially the conservatives, have completely failed to conserve and to preserve their not completely, because look in America, they have some decent chances really of I recently conducted an interview with Steve Bannon, and he said that, I posed the question, right? Don't you think that this, we ought to destroy the institution? We are specifically talking about federal agency and the CIA, etc. And he was like, yeah, but you ought to be realistic, right? You can't just be it's just gonna go. You can still use some of the procedural systems that we have in place to reform to the point that really, reform so much that to the point that really you're basically abolishing them, but you can still hope that there is something in place in the system that can help you achieve some sort of goals. But overall, really, when it comes to cultural, the cultural side of things, there's all the videos completely lost. It's just one really horrendous industry right now. There's nothing really conservative that's coming out. Once in a while there's something vaguely conservative, so yeah, on the culture front, it's been a disaster, and I totally agree. Really, the part of what we're trying to do is really replace and not trying to infiltrate, or it's a lot more complex. But it definitely resonates with me, the idea of that, there's definitely no going back. And there's definitely not, just quiet solutions that, are not going to offend people too much, or they're not going to sound radical. We really do need something radical. That was really apparent to me since 2020, and even before that, but especially from 2020 when we launched the mag. So yeah.
And there's something here that Geo said in the chat that I want to add to as well. I put it on the screen now. And that is the fact that I think it was my friend Robert Daigan. He's also written for your publication. He wrote the other day a tweet about here in South Africa, history is very real, and the real situations around him has destroyed its appetite for like political debate about theory and political philosophy, because the problems are so in your face here in South Africa. And I have to add to that, this is actually part of a piece that I'm currently writing. And it's the fact that living in Africa means that you don't really have the luxury of debating endlessly about, is this real X or is this real Y? Is this real liberalism? Was this real communism? Was this real fascism? Whatever. Like that's a luxury that you can only do if you have the luxury of constantly debating just political concepts and political philosophy like that. You're not living in a really failed state at the moment. You're not really living in hard times yet. Hard times means you don't have time or the luxury. You have to start thinking of practical solutions, and that actually adds to here what Geo is saying. Like in South Africa, a lot of the solutions that people on the outside are looking towards for inspiration are coming to the fore out of necessity, not because we just don't have nothing to do, or because we're bored, or because we are desperately looking for meaning. We're doing it out of necessity. We're working on building these solutions and alternative institutions because we have to. It's a matter of survival, cultural survival, community survival, sometimes even individual survival. So what you're doing there is already the tip of the iceberg of what will be needed in the future as hard times approach in the West. In South Africa, the future has already happened. You have the luxury of the future is still on its way in the West.
Yeah, you sound a bit like an accelerationist. It's like there's no stopping this, and the only way to sort of like it's to let it happen so you can find yourself in the solution, the situation where you have to really dig trenches, as you put it.
Well, excuse me, just before you continue there, just to separate myself from the accelerationists, I would never take the position that you need to actively make things worse. Rather, for me, it's you need to be realistic about what's going on, be realistic about the situation that you are in, and then you have to get to work. That's the main thing, is that you can't keep telling yourself everything will be fine. People smarter than me, people more powerful than me will save us. Don't worry. What can I do? You're gonna have to start doing something yourself. That's the main.
Yeah, there's a lot of denial that's going on still. Like the slightly right winger, the sort of like more sensible. I'm thinking about specifically about America, but generally in the West in general, a lot of people are still in denial in the sort of situation that we're into. So many goes as far as being so in denial that they become supporter of the regime. I think essentially is partly what happened also. Like I remember in Italy when the COVID lockdowns began. Like we saw apparent very quickly that this was like turning to some kind of like totalitarian, whatever you want to call it, completely tyrannical solutions. But it was really horrible to witness. Like how so many people really convinced themselves that actually the experts are on our side. If you walk up to a random person, you tell them generally speaking, I think the politicians are honest people. They have their best interest in mind. The ruling class have the best interests in mind for the people. They're honest. They try to do the right thing. The people laugh at you at your face. But then if you take that logical conclusion to that and you tell them, listen, everything that's going on now, the lockdowns, this is not in your best interest. You're not even in their minds. This is all a plot, or this is without going too conspiratorial. This is just like to serve their own interest, the corporate interest, to advance some kind of agenda. And then they also laugh at your face because they're not really ready to accept the dire situation we're in. So it's really red pilling. It was really like a red pilling journey of mine. I don't like to say it's definitely not black pilling, because I never really did. One was like, holy cow, there's just like no way to lead any decent life. It's all lost, or we should just like kill ourselves or whatever. It was red pilling in the sense that it was it was much worse than I thought, and I was really pretty pessimistic about like the way we were headed, but it was like sort of like a superficial pessimism, but really understanding the sort of like forces at play, or at least like getting close to getting a really good grasp. It was quite red pilling. And so, yeah, a lot of what we're trying to do also with publication is to obviously, like, the obvious goal is also to spread the message and awaken people and make them realize that you're going to have to fight. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be, you're probably going to suffer one way or another. Maybe if not you, your families, or you're going to lose your job or something like that. But, you can't really demand, it really depends on an individual level. That you can't really make a general demand. You're going to lose your job, but you have to do it. For some people, it's just too much. But really, the general message is that, we ought to organize ourselves. We ought to, congregate, get together, organize. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be hard. But, there are many. It's going to have to be done if we really want to have some kind of like decent future for our children, whatever. So,
yeah, absolutely. And the key is really to be, since we're talking about what type of attitude, the attitude is definitely when you're using the metaphors of the different color pills, but to put it in normie language is to be realistically optimistic, where it also, there's also people that create a persona and content around just being overly cynical and just blackpilling everyone, saying everything's lost, it's over, there's nothing you can do, all you can do is just sit back. Well, that's also a pathetic stance. That's also not the way. That's how you just make things worse. There's nothing positive can come from that. And no great men of the past ever did anything like. Excuse me, Mark?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, you're guilty at that point. Like, if you just decide to sit and watch,
you're just demoralizing people.
Yeah, you're demoralized. So you're participating in large part, although you're not the main person to blame, but you're contributing. So you really have a duty as a. We just published. I literally just hit publish on a new article by this guy goes by the name of Lafayette Lee on Twitter. Really great.
I saw. I still have to read it tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really brilliant. I love the guy. It's really great. And essentially he's saying it's a bit of a segue actually, but essentially it's a call for true patriotism, right? Patriotism the way it was intended, which is an attachment to the people, an attachment to your land. It runs parallel in many ways to your article itself, about the need to sort of like stand your ground and defend your country, not just like some lofty ideals or some like abstract ideas of freedom, egalitarianism, or whatever or whatnot. It really is about like defending, to the point where you're gonna have to fight for what you love. And yeah, I kind of forgot now why I brought this up now, but
no, there's no problem. I just want to acknowledge here star-studded live chat here tonight. A big figure here in the South African political dissident sphere, Morning Shot. Hello, huge fan of Mark and his work. Well, thank you very much, Morning Shot. Thank you for tuning in. And then also here's a question that I quickly want to answer before we continue with our chat. Cringe Walker asks, what are some methods we can draw in people who aren't terminally online and who don't really know the world beyond the New York Times? Well, very simple. And I mean, this is part of my job, is to get people involved here in South Africa and getting active in their communities. And the best thing you can do is to not be terminally online. If you want to go get the people involved that are not terminally online, go to their spaces. Don't just hang out on Twitter and YouTube all day. Go to where they are hanging out. They're congregating somewhere. They're congregating in churches. They're congregating at sport events. They're congregating at any type of community-based event. They're congregating at markets. They're congregating everywhere where people get together in real life. So if you want to get them involved, if you want to red pill them, well, they all are already, many of them are already very, very red pilled. But if you want to get them active and you want to draw them in, go to their spaces, go to where they're hanging out. Don't wait for them to come online, because they're never gonna come to your spaces on Twitter or on YouTube. Then you're gonna be waiting in vain. Go to where they are and go have a chat with them. Don't go to them and have like a ideological preach or lecture at them. Just go and talk about what do they think about what's going on around them. What do you think about this? Are you happy with this? Doesn't this piss you off? And you'll realize just through those types of conversations, you'll start getting people involved, and then you build those social connections. You build that network. That's my best answer there.
Yeah, and you also realize really, like, if you're terminally online, you sort of like start to formulate the impression that most people that the word is plain insane, but it looks a lot more insane online than it is offline. It's a lot easier to sort of like talk common sense to people if you're not outright ideological or hostile. It's a lot more easy it's a lot easier to convince to sort of like find, create bonds with average decent people, and there are plenty of those, so yeah, and also really, yeah, we're trying to do that as well. We're trying to transition a little bit now from the online to the in real life, so like creating a little bit of an institutional bent to the project as well. So hopefully there's some there's going to be we're going to be able to create a bit more possibilities for people to meet in real life as well. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's you have to go out there. You have to connect with people. You have to tell them what's going on if they don't know it. You have to encourage them to do something, and
yeah, and you can't just preach to the choir all day in your social media circle. Those people are already converted. You're going to have to go out there and talk to other people. You're going to have to socialize like all your ancestors did before you. You're kind of living in strange times where you also have these pseudo social interactions online, but all your ancestors before you, they were all out there. They were all in meat world. They were all out there among the normies, spreading their ideas. That's how it worked, and you're going to have to go back to that. It's actually it's funny that in our attempt to spread conservative or right side of the spectrum ideas, you actually have to behave reactionary. You have to go back and do it as your ancestors did.
It's also really now, at the same time, it's really actually not that easy at the same time, right? Because like I think I saw recently someone articulating, it might even actually be in like a clip I saw on Twitter. Somebody made the point really like what we really lack in our communities. They're not very built on like sort of like a localism. They're very atomized, and everybody just like works far from the work. They get the tube, but if you live in a big city or even like a smaller city, we sort of like lost that ability to sort of like build a kind of a communities. It's definitely a lot harder to sort of like go out there and find people that are close to you and so like build a community. Because it used to be, you just used to go out. There used to be a place where everybody met, after work, whatever. We don't really have that. Our society are not really built that way anymore. So it's definitely a lot harder to go out there. You find yourself so like, as you said, like preaching or so like, shooting in the dark, just whoever you can stop on the street. It's a lot harder, the institution that you mentioned, the church, whatever really, they're definitely declining. So it's a lot harder than it used to be. It used to be a lot easier. Politics used to be more local. You used to go out there. You used to talk to, and you're gonna meet someone if you had in one place, and you're gonna meet someone if you had in another place. We don't really have that anymore. So it's definitely a lot harder, but it doesn't mean we should despair. So.
No, absolutely. It's definitely harder, but then you have to ask yourself the question there. Your ancestors and people before you also had their own challenges, and you're going to be the first guy in the chain or the first link in the chain that said, no, I'm opting out. My challenges of my time are too great. I cannot solve them. And then you're going to have to live with that fact. And that's the thing when it comes to building these networks. You don't have to start tomorrow with 100 people. You start by talking to one person. You start by talking to two people, and you go. There's still many social events that you just have to be on the lookout for. But Mark, I actually also wanted to ask you to get back to your publication. Are there any other online or physical publications that you draw some inspiration from, or that you think actually influenced the way that you set up your own? Or maybe even publications that you could just recommend that had an influence on your own?
Oh yeah, totally. Well, Quillette was a good inspiration insofar as I needed to figure out what not to be. It was. No, I'm only joking. It wasn't inspiration at all. I really respect what the Claremont people are doing. They were quite inspirational. I think I think really what let me down, the sort of like rabbit hole that I essentially came across, what is known as the dissident, right? I think it was actually Mike Anton's review of Bronze Age Mindset. It's a book by Bronze Age Pervert. I think really it was either that or some article about that mentioned the review or something like that. And so I came across Claremont, the publication, The American Mind, and the institute in general. And I thought, they still are. I mean, and I'm I'm in contact with a lot of them. They were doing good work, and they were like rhetorically very alive. They were willing also to engage with ideas that previously was like unthinkable. That somebody would even consider these people. They were demonized, they're currently demonized, but they were like willing to reach out and considering some more like dissident, however you want to call them, a bit more radical, outside so like boundaries of political of acceptable discourse. So they were an inspiration a little bit. More than a little bit, I would say fairly so, and they were also really. What really was different about something like Claremont, for instance, they're really like, I wouldn't say really ideologically was inspirational. It was mostly like a willingness to like what we are saying now. You ought to do the work. You ought to send the police to knock on people's door. They're willing to sort of like engage with the idea of power, of sort of like regaining power, which is something like the conservatives are sort of like. It's like the boogeyman, they're basically classical liberals, but in the worst sense. The Claremont people are more like classical liberal, more like the classical sense. So it was inspiration on that way. So what else? There was actually there wasn't that much really, and that's probably why I decided to start the publication. There weren't any really publication out there that were willing, especially again, like became very apparent to me in 2020. There weren't that many publications that were willing to say what the things that needed to be said and take it, to the extra step. They were scared or unaware that those are the kind of solutions that we need, or just like too scared to publicly admit it and publish them. So as I said, I came across all these network and communities, or whatever you want to call it, online, these people that are somewhat connected to one another. And it just became apparent to me that it would be a good idea to put them together and to get some kind of network, an outlet where they can, publish their views. There was a lot less, thinking. It was back then. It was just like, like a complete, everything that I thought was true, or that I thought was correct about the way we should organize society. So like in a way collapsed, and so I was like so open-minded. That but I didn't really have like a strong foundations, and now there's a lot more strategizing, and thinking involved. At the beginning, it was just that, it was like these people are making sense, but are not getting published. These people are saying the things that are very insightful. They have some criticism of what's going on. It seems a lot more accurate in the mainstream, and so I decided to start a publication really because there were not other publication that really lived up to at least my ideas. Might not be good ideas, but still, that was the main reason. I forgot your second question. Was it about like other publications now?
No, I just wanted to ask. The second part was: are there any publications that you read often that you would recommend?
Well, I keep an eye on. I like what Darren Beatty is doing. Revolver is not really like your normal publication. It's like a news aggregator website thing they're called. They link other stuff, of articles from other publication, or like even like Twitter threads. But I do also like some investigative journalism. So I keep an eye a lot on that, and what Darren Beatty is doing. Other publications I still read the American Mind. I still I actually read quite a few, and let's see if I can think another a couple of good ones. Yeah, and I would say that mainly those two. I keep an eye. I have to keep an eye on in general to see what the general direction is going. But I would say those still do that to some degree I look up to.
And then also what I wanted to know specifically about your website, you seem to be putting a lot of thought into the thumbnails and the aesthetic and the look of your website. I just want to hear from you, how important is that aspect? You've been talking a lot about the content that you want to put out there, but how important is that aesthetic side of your publication as well?
I think it's really important, man. I'm literally obsessed by it. It took me this morning it took me more to find a picture for Lafayette Leeds article than it took me to edit it. And it's really an obsession of mine to take care of the aesthetic aspect. You might not like it, we had some generally the reception of the print edition, which I designed myself as well. As I said earlier, like really that's my most really the main input, the main contribution that I give to the project, besides being behind the scenes and I guess commissioning and all of that. It's really the aesthetic aspect. But we got some like vague criticism. People wanted. I think there's a little bit of still like LARPing a little bit when it comes to the art and aesthetics from like some of the conservative side. Oh, it's too modern, or it's too, it's not, you used sans serif type font or whatever. But I like it like that, and I think they're wrong. And yeah, I put a lot of care into it. I think, well, first of all, because I like it, I enjoy it a lot, and second of all, I really it's important to both from a like strategic point perspective, to sort of like create an outlet that is aesthetically pleasing, at the same time sort of like indicates that you put a lot more into work, or at least that you can afford to put a lot into work, which increases your reputation or your credibility to some degree, right? Rather than just like taking some random images, whatever, from the internet, which a lot of publications do. So there's a little bit of that because of that. And as I said before, I mean, I tend to think in images. And so a lot of like my attempt to build and sort of like trying to find a vision forward and trying to articulate a vision forward, I do it a lot better with images. And so it's really my side of things, I would say, probably, to create an aesthetic coherence that that can somehow influence the state of discourse in the same way that we do, or probably not to the same degree, but in the same that we do by the actual words that we publish. So that's mainly why I do it, and I enjoy it a lot. I'm really obsessed by it. It's an obsession. Maybe it's a bit unhealthy at points, because I spend way too much looking for or taking care of that at points that I could spend elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask because there's a lot of artists in the live chat and in the audience here tonight. Geo, Finn, and a lot of them write for your publication as well. I think that's something that also stands out. Your publication, IM-1776, is not just about political content. There's a lot of art content there as well. That's playing a large role in your content database, if I could call it that.
Well, yeah, that's actually began. It wasn't really intended. I never really. I mean, we probably published some like more artistic, art themed articles or literature themed articles before, but it actually began with an interview I conducted with Mike Kenton. It was, I believe, slightly more than a year ago now, like late 2021 or something like that. And I wasn't even planning on asking that. It was a really good interview, by the way. It's quite popular, but I was sort of like surprised about how popular was that little segment when I asked him about like the right inability to create any of artistic value. That was really popular. Like a lot of people, we talked a whole bunch of things, and it was quite a popular interview. But that bit really got a lot of attention. Also, I was like, wait, it wasn't even like in the list of questions I prepared. But I asked him, what do you think that reason? And he talked about patronage networks and said a few more things. And so that's what idea to sort of like dig a little bit more into this problem and make the publication, make the incapacity of producing anything artistically beautiful or artistically capable of moving people or convincing people, or even just like giving them a sense of awe, whatever it is, however you wanted to define the purpose of art. That's how it began. It was that interview a year ago, and then that's what idea of even dedicating our first print edition to the art problem itself came from. It wasn't planned either. It was just happened, and now we do a lot of we publish a lot, and we're trying to think. It's very central to our publication now. Not essential, but it's quite central. This idea of sort of like instigating or encouraging some kind of like artistic revival, or at least some kind of like increasing production of artists, the kind of art that can be called art. Let's just put it that way.
Well, absolutely. Well, I'm firmly of the opinion that it's a simple mission, but we have to start talking about the beautiful and the good again. We shouldn't just get bogged down in the philosophical debates and the theory. We also have to start going back to the simple questions again of like, what is good, what is beautiful, and why is it good, and why is it beautiful? It's going to get very philosophical, but I think that's important. I think it's important that your publication, for example, isn't just good content. It also has to look good. It also has to be something that people enjoy looking at, something that the thumbnail adds as part of the content. It is also, I mean, that's what I try with my thumbnails and with my YouTube videos and streams as well, is that the thumbnail also has to add to the content that I create. So I think
Right,
that's
'cause that's
very
really
important that you have an eye for
really
it.
the first thing people come across, right? That's the first impression that they get. So the way that you sort of like promote your content, the way you put out your whatever you want to say, you know, you increase your chances of attracting attention and attracting a predisposition of people to consider what you're saying, right? It's just some random images everyone else is using, or just the first one that you find, you know, on Google when you type free images and you know, some keyword or something.
Right.
And so yeah, and I wanted to say one more thing actually about, because you said, you know, it's gonna get very philosophical. I should probably say, because like, as I said, like the reception of the magazine was really good. The only part of the criticism that we got was twofold. One, that we like really didn't get enough into depth about really what art is, like from a philosophical perspective, and the other one, that it wasn't there wasn't enough like stories, or actually there wasn't enough, the articles themselves, that wasn't really artistic in nature. They were almost like on the journalistic side, or maybe a bit more intellectual or whatever. It wasn't the idea. The idea really was to raise awareness with that issue itself, you know, to put it out, to get people you know, to pay attention to this problem of, you know, the incapacity of producing anything. So I just wanted to make that point, that we weren't attempting to define art, nor to sort of like, although we might do that in the future, nor to making it all art and literature, just making, you know, fiction or whatever. It was just about raising awareness about this particular issue. So
no, that's important to note. What I also wanted to know, but Mark, you're very humble about your platform. You seem to play down a lot of what I think has been a big achievements of it. And I wanted to know, what are some of the things. I mean, your publication's not that old yet, but in the time that it's been up, and in the time that you've been publishing on it, what are some of the things that have made you proud of your creation, and the thing that you've created with your colleagues there, or the people that you work with?
Well, I would say probably the print edition is actually, I'm quite proud of the way that we managed to put it together. It's not really easy, you know. I never really found out how essentially business, you know, running a publication, right? Really any business, just like dealing with one disaster after the other. It wasn't until I started publication which I realized that, I screwed up in so many different ways. But, you know, we managed to put it together. We managed to do it. We managed to transition from online to print, and it went, you know, reasonably well. And so yeah, I'm quite proud on the more personal level about that. But, you know, in general, really about everyone that I've been able to put together, you know, I really, you know, if I go, like you were asking me earlier about, you know, mainstream publications or like other publications that if I go through the most, you know, well reputation, or like the more well-known publication, like more mainstream with a better reputation or whatever, there really isn't like, I really probably don't even come across a single writer on the homepage that I would like to bring on. The people that I have on, you know, yourself included, and everyone else that I published so far, they really are the people that I think they're most talented, at least that I can come across. That are making more sense. So I'm quite proud of like how many people we've been able to put together. You know, as I said, we're you know, I started on my own, and for quite some time it was just basically just me. Now I'm getting some really good editorial help, so I'm quite proud and grateful for everyone that's published, especially my editorial team. You know, the Daniel Miller was actually the first submission I've ever got, and he's been on board to some degree ever since, and even more so lately. Also Benjamin Braddock, the other one, my good friend Benjamin, who's been increasingly so for the past few months, for the last year or so. So yeah, I'm quite proud in general of, you know, you say I'm humble. I'm actually, you know, I think you're right. It's been quite a success, and so I'm quite proud in general what has been what we've been able to put together, I guess.
One of the things that I also, now that you mentioned the physical copy, my copy is still, I think, in transit according to the South African Post Office. Yeah, there it is. Now that you mention it, there is a phenomenon around the physical copy that I quite enjoyed, and that's everyone that received it took a picture with like a vista or a very nice background with holding the physical copy. And I saw you also took note of that organic thing that happened around it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get it. What did I do?
No, I saw when the first copy or hard copies went out, people started posting photos online with like beautiful backgrounds and vistas and holding up the copy. And I think you also noticed that people started doing that with your first publication. What do you think of that?
Oh, it was great. I mean, as I said, like the reception has been really good. Like it's been really at points even overwhelming. You know, we received a lot of compliments. Really for all the articles that were written, all beautifully written, very good articles. You know, I received quite some personal compliments. I say because I took care of the whole aesthetic aspect myself. And yeah, as you said, you know, like a lot of people promoted promoted the publication, the print edition itself. You know, they posted the images online, so it was quite cool to see. You know, every now and then, you know, you check the notification, there was new pictures, so I retweeted all of them. It was quite cool.
Yeah, here's someone reading it on a mountain. Here's one with a beach in the background. Here's one in a forest. It was very nice that people didn't just take a picture of it lying on their desk. They were going outside and getting a nice background to show they got the first.
Yeah, there were quite a few of that as well. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that added to the aesthetic. I really enjoyed that started that little phenomenon happened around
well, if you ever get to South Africa. Is this the second or the third copy that I tried to send you?
This is the second copy that you sent, but when I receive it, I will definitely go to a scenic place here in Africa and take a very African background picture.
I apologize to everyone that bought the copy for the thousands of ways that we messed up, delays and whatever. It was the first time, so we screwed up in 2 different ways. But most people seem to be getting it at some point, whether after a week or after a month and a half.
So. No, on my side, it's definitely not your fault. It's the just living in a developing country that's the problem. So, Mark, I also wanted to know, now that you're talking about some of the mistakes that you made, I'm not going to ask you what are some of the mistakes. I'd rather just like to know what are some of the main challenges that you learned from, that you faced when you first started publishing and when you first brought out this physical copy. Are there any that come to mind?
The one that comes to mind to the print publication itself, they're actually a bit boring because they're more like technical things like color correction when I screwed up. When I got the first magazine, this is how obsessed I am with aesthetics. When I first got my it's called the test run, whatever. When we ran that and I got it in my hands, I almost I wanted to kill myself. I wanted to throw myself out the balcony. And it was so bad. It was so many images was just too dark. And, the transition from screen to print, I wasn't prepared to that, because obviously the screen emits light and the print obviously reflects light. So you see it very bright on the screen and then it's sort of completely different on the print. And so I was completely depressed about it for a couple of days. So I ended up spending a bunch of money to have the few pictures that look too dark reprinted. If it was for me, if I could afford it, I would have reprinted it all. So that's really what comes to mind on the more technical side of things. And challenges, I would say, with the publication, I don't really know. I don't really think it's challenging. It's a lot of work, but because I always enjoyed it so much ever since I started, it never really felt like work. It never really felt like going through something really hard. And maybe I haven't come across anything really challenging. Maybe I would be able to fly under the radar. Maybe some big challenges are going to come, but I can't really think of really one big challenge.
And then also what I wanted to know, before I want to read this comment here in the chat because I think it's very nice. Sideliner Opinion says, Mark, your publication has given massive international exposure to Arends and his thoughts about politics in South Africa and the world. We can all learn from each other. Now, that's absolutely true. That's why that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to Mark, because I think we can learn, people can learn a lot from your experience, Mark. Start actually jumping into the deep end and starting your publication, starting something. I mean, definitely.
I just hit publish on your article. That was your article that really was good. I just edited it. Daniel edited yours, and we just hit publish. So that's your doing. If IM is knowing and it has some kind of, your articles has some kind of effect, it's your doing. It's not mine. Just be the platform, I guess. We got some pretty decent following and a lot of really cool people promoting our content. So that it probably helped over there. It's a really good article. But I'm really happy to hear, by the way. You told me it got quite some people talking, etc.
No, thank you. Thank you for the platform. Yeah, no, I got a lot of good feedback from all across the world. It was also a very humbling experience. But when it comes to that's why.
your friend Robert as well. We published before on South Africa. That was really good as well.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah, no,
Robert.
yeah, I enjoyed his piece as well. No, that's why actually one of the pieces that I read just to see what type of approach he took for your publication. He was one of the pieces that I just read for a little bit of aesthetic guidance and a little bit of a format guidance. But then, yeah, when it comes to why I wanted to do one of the reasons why I wanted to do this chat as well, to add to what Sideline Opinion said there, is that yes, the message of my piece was that people can learn from South Africa, but then at the same time, we as South Africans can also learn a lot from what people in the West are doing. For example, like I said, what you're doing, where you're instead of trying to change or trying to save an old publication, you're building a new one. You're jumping in the deep end. You're taking the risk, and you're building something new. That's difficult. That's people would rather just be preoccupied with things that already exist. Creating something out of nothing is not easy, and it's a lot of people think that it's easy until they actually start doing it. So I think that's also something that that we can learn from what's going on in the West, is to see how the West is people in the Western countries are approaching their own problems and how they're approaching creating their own institutions and publications and platforms. I think there's still a lot for us here in South Africa to learn as well.
Do you think there's more going on in the West and countries like America than it is in South Africa?
Well, it would depend. I think there's different forms of innovation going on in South Africa. The type of innovation going on is survival innovation and living and innovation under very high pressure and very high stakes. In countries like America, innovation is going on in more subtle ways in regards to, for example, the creation of new platforms, the creation of new institutions, but specifically for that environment. So you can, it's the different contexts where these solutions are coming from that where you actually get the insight. And before we continue, I just wanted to read here. 99 Iron Duke says, more power to you, Arends. You're doing great work. Thank you very much, Iron Duke. You've been subscribed for a long while. That's why I wanted to highlight your comment there as well. Mark, as we get to the closer to the end, I just have a few more questions left that I wanted to pick your brain on before you say goodbye. The one is, how is your publication funded, or how is it? What's the model that you use to make it possible? Maybe people can learn from that as well. Just to give us a little bit of an idea that you don't have to literally give us the blueprint. Just what's the model?
There isn't much to know because we're not funded by anyone. We're not funded by any institutions. We're trying to figure out really that aspect of the enterprise. We're at some point we're gonna have to find a way to get some kind of institutional support, whether it's one way or another, with a grant, an investment, or whatever. At the moment, we'll survive. Actually, I have to I guess give a little bit of a shout out to Charles Haywood. It was actually, I don't think I made it public before, but I think most people know one way or another we sort of made it public. He gave us a little bit. Gave me a little bit about a year ago, just enough, when I lost my job. I think I admitted that part before. I moved back to London about a year ago when I basically because I refused to vaccinate it. When the vaccine mandates started to get enforced in Italy, I lost my normal job, so I was literally now, even more than before, like completely incapable of continuing to fund the project. I had to sort of like maybe find a job, and Charles Haywood pitched in, so he was kind enough to give us a little bit to at least finance the first issue and make it through. Personally, for the past 6-10 months, something like that. But other than that, it's really been just like small donations from time to time. And now we're as I said, we're sorting that now. We're building a new membership platform on the website. It's still in the works.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it should go up sometime next month, and people are gonna have to really gonna be able to subscribe initially just to access some kind of like extra content. We're gonna put some like specials monthly. We're gonna put all the articles in the issue up. So we're hoping to get some support enough from that to continue to pay my editors and the writers the way they deserve, and continue to finance the operation, the issue, the publication. But without that, we don't really have that any institutional support or anything like that. Just mostly chance, and we're making it so hard. We'll see.
All right, and then the question that I always ask before I give you the opportunity to show where people can find all your content, I want to ask you if I ask all my guests at the end of our conversations, if you could leave the audience with any type of thought or question or anything that you want them to think about in the week ahead, and it doesn't have to be a long monologue; it can be a simple sentence or an idea. What would you leave them with to think about maybe in the week ahead? Something to keep at the back of their mind.
Probably the only one I can think of right now, be a good message, I guess, to come across is what you said before. It's gonna get uncomfortable. It's gonna get tough. We're gonna be in positions where you have to sacrifice some relationships occasionally, and you'll have to build new ones. And I guess I will add to that really something I was even thinking about more today because I was editing Lafayette Lee's article. I think there's a point where it says really we're not utopians, right? So forget about these sort of like solutions that just going to be they're going to be devoid of conflict, and we're going to get to the point we can just continue to reason from this idea that we're peace and love, and we're just going to get along. There are always going to be differences, there are always going to be conflict. War has always been here. It's been waiting for us before we even got here, and it's always going to be here. And it might be necessary at some point that you'll have to fight one way or another, whatever fighting is going to mean, whether it's online, whether it's offline, in real life, in the military, or whatever. Probably not in military these days, but so yeah, it's gonna get uncomfortable, and just we ought to be ready. I guess that's what I have to say.
Yeah, well, that's very similar to a message that I always tell my audience here as well, is that you need to be, like I said earlier, you have to be realistically optimistic, be realistic about the situation, but optimistic about what you can do about it. I think that's very important. And Mark, well, as we get here to the end, I would just want one last opportunity now to, there's already all links to everything, to your publication and to your Twitter and social media is in the description, but I also wanted to ask, is there anywhere else that you'd like to give a shout out to where people can find your work or anything except your website and your Twitter?
Actually, no, there really is just it. We're mostly on Twitter. I guess people, if you want to follow us on Facebook as well, they can do that. On the website itself, there's a link on the not the sidebar, the top bar, to our print edition. So if you want to support right now, as I said, we're building a membership platform, so they'll be able to do that way as well. But they can purchase a copy of our issue, and so that's the one that it's all there is right now.
Right. So yeah, before the membership goes live, the way people can support your publication is by buying a physical copy.
Oh yeah, if they're interested in one, we got a donate page. We're sending a new one up, but they can donate for that as well. Be much appreciated, and even the smallest amount can make a difference. So if they want to do that, they can do it as well.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for your time here tonight. It was an excellent discussion. I really enjoyed it. And then I also want to thank everyone that tuned in. Thank you for all your excellent comments and questions in the live chat. I really appreciate you all taking your time to listen to this long format conversation. And then also, if you're new to this channel, you can subscribe if you like these types of conversations. They happen every week on a Tuesday. And then also you can leave a like, that helps out the show. And then lastly, if you're watching this and it's not live, you can still share your thoughts and you can still take part in the conversation in the comment section. I read all of them and respond to as many as I can. And I really enjoy hearing your feedback. So you can take part in the conversation there in the comment section. But Mark, thank you very much. I hope you have an excellent week. And I hope your publication, IM-1776, link in the description, goes from strength to strength. And that there's still a lot of exciting things in the future that you can be proud of.
Oh, likewise, man. It's been a pleasure. And thank you very much for the invite.
All right. Cheers, guys. Have a good one, and God bless.